Shavua Tov, this week's Parsha, Ki-Tetze milchama lo yavecha, when you go out to fight a war against your enemy. Who is your enemy? The Yetzer, Hara, the evil inclination. And I'd like to suggest three generals to help us fight this war. One will be Yosef HaTzadik, the other one will be Aharon HaKohen, and the third will be Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. In the beginning of the Parsha, there's a very strange mitzvah. It's the mitzvah of Yefat Toar. It describes a situation where a Jewish soldier in the army is out in the battle and he sees among the captives a very beautiful woman, and she's obviously non-Jewish, and he wants to take her. Is he allowed to do so? The Torah says yes. He takes her into his house. He cuts off all her hair. She has to grow her fingernails and sit there in the house, crying and mourning for her father and mother for 30 days, right there in the living room. And after 30 days, if he wishes to marry her, she will convert to Judaism, and then he can marry her. This is a very interesting mitzvah, and there are a couple of questions I want to raise about it that will help us understand it a little better. One question is, what type of a war does this mitzvah apply in? There are two types of wars that the Jewish people could fight. One is called a milchemet mitzvah. The other one is called a milchemet reshut, a mitzvah war or an optional war. An optional war, we'll start with that, is a war being fought abroad, outside the borders of the land of Israel. It's a war to expand our territory, if you will. A mitzvah war is the war basically fought by Joshua to conquer the land of Israel, to destroy and eliminate the 7 Canaanite pagan nations that lived here. About them it is said, Lo techayeh kol neshama, you cannot keep anyone alive, they have to be completely destroyed. So is this mitzvah of Yefat Toar, of bringing the beautiful non-Jewish woman into your home and marrying her after 30 days, does it apply in both types of wars, or does it apply only in a optional war? Most of the Rishonim are of the opinion only in an optional war, because in an obligatory war, well, you're not supposed to have captives in the first place. So therefore, this woman, not only shouldn't you be able to marry her, you're not allowed to keep her alive. Lo techayeh kol neshama, the Torah says, don't keep one soul alive. However, the Rambam is of the opinion that there is an exception to the Lo techayeh kol neshama, that there is an exception to the rule of eliminating them all, and that is the beautiful non-Jewish woman, that the mitzvah of Yefat Toar even applies in a melchemet mitzvah, a mitzvah war. That's one machloket. The other machloket that I wanted to discuss is, the question is, when is he allowed to physically be with this woman? The Ramban and Rashi are of the opinion that he must wait 30 days. In other words, he sees her in the war and he falls in love with her immediately. And even though he may want to be with her right away, the Torah says, okay, but you have to wait 30 days. She has to cut her hair. She's got to grow her nails. She's got to cry for her parents for 30 days. And then you can convert her and marry her. So that is the opinion of the Ramban and Rashi. However, other Rishonim, Rabbeinu Tam, and I think also the Rambam, say, no, he's allowed to be with her once. Not in the middle of the battle, obviously, for modesty reasons. He has to take her to a house someplace else. But he can be with her once at that first day, and then, if he wishes to continue with her, then they have the 30 days, and then she has to convert, and then they get married. I think from both of these issues, there's an overall question about this mitzvah that one can ask to understand it better. Is this mitzvah to protect the woman or to protect the soldier? The Ramban is pretty clear that it's to protect the woman, that this woman is eventually, if she converts, this is going to be a great thing for her. She's going to become part of the Jewish nation. She's going to have a home. She's going to have a husband. And this is wonderful. But if she's forced to convert right away at the beginning of the war, because we're not going to accept an ongoing relationship with a non-Jewish woman, nobody says that. So there's got to be a conversion. So the Ramban says if you convert her at the beginning, that's cruelty. She's converting not because of sincerity. She's converting because of fear. On that very day, she was dragged out of her home and she's going to be thrown into a new life. That's cruelty. So in order to protect the woman, we say there has to be 30 days when she can get her mourning out, mourn for her parents, mourn for her, not just her parents, for her whole lifestyle that she knew in the past, which is now gone, and get used to this new family and have them accept her, even though she's not beautiful at the moment because her hair has been cut and her fingernails are growing. And so it's to protect her, that if she's going to be married, she'll convert with true faith and become an upstanding part of the Jewish people, and if not, so then she is released to freedom. You cannot continue to keep her because you've abused her. So it's to protect the woman. However, most of the Rishonim say that this mitzvah is to protect the soldier, and they're basing themselves on the Gemara in Kiddushin. And the Gemara in Kiddushin tells us, how are we protecting the soldier? We're protecting him from his Yetzer Hara, from his evil inclination. Because at the heat of that moment in battle, he would not be able to withstand it. And if we don't allow him to marry her in a permissible fashion, then he will marry her in an impermissible fashion, meaning he'll marry her as a non-Jew. It'll become an intermarriage. It'll be a bad thing. So we have what seems to me, shockingly, a compromise with the Yetzer Hara. Since when do we compromise with the Yetzer Hara? We should never compromise with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara works that way. It says, today do a little thing, and do something else tomorrow, and do something the more after the day after that, until it says to the person, go and worship idols. In other words, the Yetzer Hara, Aveira goreret Aveira, one sin brings another. So how is it that the Torah itself is giving us a mitzvah, a heter, an allowing something to compromise, to appease the Yetzer Hara? Shocking. What does that protect? What does that mean? We'll suggest an original answer a little bit later. But on the way, we learn some tactics about how to fight the evil inclination from our generals. The first tactic we learned, based on, again, the Ramban and Rashi, is to not confront the Yetzer Hara when the Yetzer Hara comes, but rather delay, push it off. The Yetzer Hara says, I want you to sin. So we say, okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow, next week, next month. And that we learn from Yosef HaTzadik, that the wife of Potiphar every day wanted him, and he kept saying, not today, I have a headache, whatever, not today, pushing it off, hoping it would go away. It didn't go away, and then finally he had to run out and flee when things came to a head. So that's the story of pushing the Yetzer Hara off. That's tactic number one. Just like this soldier wants this woman. He wants her now. They're in the heat of battle. He's feeling this tremendous urge. And the Torah says, okay, in a month. That's going to be enough to get the Yetzer Hara to say, all right. If I can have it in a month, I'm still good with that. So that's one tactic. The second tactic we'll also learn from Yosef HaTzadik. Now we discussed the question of if this mitzvah applies in a war of the 7 nations, a milchemet mitzvah, where we have to destroy the 7 nations, or is it just in an optional war? Most of the Rishonim say it's only in an optional war. Now, according to the approach that this mitzvah is to compromise with the evil inclination, well, why should it make a difference then? The man has an evil inclination in any type of a war, whether it's an optional war or it's a milchemet mitzvah. So the Rambam, who Dafka says it applies even in milchemet mitzvah, that makes more sense. If it's about his evil inclination, he'll feel it no matter what the war is, won't he? The answer is maybe not. The historian Stephen Ambrose, who is an expert on the Second World War, raises the question of how come wherever the German army conquered, they raped, pillaged, and murdered in those towns. Not just in World War II, in World War I as well. Some of the stories about the conquest of towns in Belgium are horrific. And yet, how is it that the British and American armies, when they conquered the towns in Germany back from the Germans, they didn't, by and large, rape and pillage and murder? And Ambrose gives a very insightful answer, that the Germans fought a war in order to be strong and to be conquering. And so, well, if you're going to be strong and conquering, if you're going to be superior, if you're going to be a master race, well, then you have to demonstrate that by abusing the people you conquer, because that shows that you're strong and conquering. But the Americans were fighting and the British were fighting to liberate these people who had been oppressed. So they're not going to become oppressors themselves. That would be contradictory to their entire mission. And that is the second technique. Joseph was confronted by the wife of Potiphar. He was in the throes of passion. But what happened? The rabbis say that he saw the image of his father Jacob, and that image gave him the strength to get up and run out of the house and not commit the sin. In other words, he remembered his mission, his purpose in life. And therefore his purpose is not to destroy a marriage and a home, but rather his purpose is to serve and to build. And so too, When the Jewish people are fighting a war of conquest, of reshut, outside the land of Israel, then maybe they will feel that temptation to show that they are conquerors and take the woman home. But when they are fighting a milchemet mitzvah to destroy idolatry, to destroy nations that believed in human sacrifice, to remove the evil from the land and prepare it for the settling of the Jewish people, so then this guy is not going to take one of these pagans and then bring them into the people. And this person is, in the sense of going in a mission, is not going to then act in a way that is contrary to that very mission. So therefore, milchemet mitzvah, that Yetzer Hara wouldn't exist, and that's why those rabbis say. And that's the second tactic, is to strengthen our sense of mission, our sense of identity. Is this sin that I'm being tempted to do, is this appropriate for who I am and what I wish to see happening in the world and what I wish to accomplish? 99.9% of the cases, 100% of the cases, the answer is no, and therefore the person should never, ever, not even in 1%, should never commit that sin. The third approach. Now, we mentioned the Rambam, who says that even in a milchemet mitzvah, that one has a leniency, a compromise with the evil inclination to take this beautiful woman. And we asked the question at the beginning, since when do we compromise with the Yetzer Hara? That sounds completely wrong. The Yetzer Hara, you have to not compromise. Zero tolerance. That should be the policy. So I'd like to suggest a novel interpretation, that the Torah is not allowing you to be with this beautiful non-Jewish woman. If you were to ask the rabbi in the throes of battle, may I take this non-Jewish woman now? The rabbi would say no. But I think that perhaps, because I'm following the opinion that allows him to be with her the first time, right then at the beginning, and then the 30 days would be before he could be with her again. So that opinion, I'm following that opinion would say, I'm saying that it's not that he's asking the question, it's that he did it. He did it. He took the woman and went where they went and did what he did. And this is the compromise with the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara will now say to him, hey buddy, you messed up. You're through. You're through. You can't be a part of the Jewish people now. You went with this non-Jew. You're finished. You've become defiled, and therefore you have been expelled. So that's what the Yetzer Hara says. So the Torah comes and says, oh, wait. Yes, you did something that you should not have done, but you know what? We will purify it. We will allow you, this very same non-Jewish woman, after 30 days, after the cutting of the hair, the growing of the nails, the mourning, and then she will convert, and then you can marry her. In other words, you are not a prisoner of your past. You can change, you can improve. And that we learn from Aharon HaKohen, who made the golden calf, as the Torah says. And yet it is the same Aharon HaKohen, who is the Kohen Gadol, who symbolizes atonement and forgiveness, who stands in the Holy of Holies, getting atonement for the people for the very golden calf that he was involved with. He wasn't a prisoner of his past. He was a student of his past. He wasn't determined, he didn't become determined that he had to continue sinning. Lehefech, he turned that sin into a zechut, into a merit, by helping the whole people become reconciled with our Father in heaven. And so therefore, that is the compromise with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara wants to say to the person, you did that, you're a hypocrite. You're not a hypocrite. You can ex post facto, you can b'diavad, move that sin and turn it into a zechut. You might even marry this woman and build a beautiful home in the Jewish people. So that is the third tactic, which we learned from Aharon HaKohen. Until now, we've talked about the aspect of this mitzvah which relates to man's relationship to God. But what about man's relationship to his fellow man, or woman, as the case may be? We mentioned the Ramban, who seems to interpret that this mitzvah of Yifat Toar, the 30 days, is to heal and to solve the woman's problem. And that's very important. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld coined an interesting phrase explaining why it is that Jewish men in the diaspora seem to be especially interested in non-Jewish women. He says non-Jewish women have what he called shikts appeal. There's no way to translate that, but you understand the meaning. What is shikts appeal? Seeing this woman not as a woman, but as an object. There's something about the non-Jewish woman which is very attractive. But when you get to know the person, the human being behind the object, behind the externalities. Is this really someone with whom you can build a future? And what happens here is that he's in the heat of battle. He sees a woman who has shik's appeal, and she's an object, because there's no way he could know her just by seeing her. She comes into his house, she takes away all the signs of beauty, cuts her hair, grows her nails, cries, red eyes. And so she's not physically beautiful anymore. The object is gone. But she's crying for her mother and her father. She's talking about her upbringing. He gets to know who this person is, takes away the object and puts a person in her place. And then he can decide, really, is she for me? Is she not for me? And this is a great tactic when we deal with the evil inclination towards other people. The Kedushat Levi, Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, was a great lover of the Jewish people. The story is told that some enemies of his in his town that wanted to get him out of there, that he shouldn't be the rabbi, one day took his wife and children, put them on a wagon, sent them out of the town. The supporters of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, when they heard this, they were furious. They said to each other, let's go and pray to Hashem that he punish these bullies who did this. And one said to the other, it won't work. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is doubtlessly already in the Beit Midrash by the Holy Ark, asking God to forgive these bullies for what they have done. Because Rabbi Levi Yitzchak understood that somebody who may have sinned against me, somebody who may have hurt me or whom I hurt, if I don't understand where they are coming from, then I will never be able to reconcile. And when somebody hurts me, and I don't want to understand them, then the evil inclination of fighting and revenge will come into play. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak understood what the Mishnah that we read today said, that you shall not judge your friend until you have stood in his place. We need to understand why other people do things that they do, even if they're hurtful to us. And if we understand where they come from, that can soften the blow, and maybe we will not get as angry, we will not be vindictive to them, or they will not be vindictive to us, and that will heal our interpersonal relationships. Just like this woman went from being an object to becoming a three-dimensional human being. And so there are our three tactics. From Yosef HaTzadik, we learn when the Yetzer Hara comes, be lazy, say I'll talk to you tomorrow, next week, next month, and use our sense of mission to defeat the Yetzer Hara when the Yetzer Hara wants us to act in ways that are contrary to our identity as Jews. And we learn from Aaron O'Kahain not to say, well, I sinned, I can't be a hypocrite. No, we sinned, that's our teacher to do better in the future, and then the sin becomes a zechut, not to be imprisoned by our failures. And finally, from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, to learn that before we get angry at others and seek revenge, we should understand where they come from, and that will help defeat the Yetzer Hara. Shavua Tov.